Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. Happy holidays. We are here on Sunday night, and we are celebrating the holidays tonight. As you can see, I'm a little fancier than normal. I'm not in a Star Wars t-shirt. I literally rolled in the door about 10 minutes ago from my wife's company Christmas party. So I've had a little bit of Christmas cheer, and we have a little bit more Christmas cheer as we hang out tonight, as we talk, as we bring on our friend Pete in just a minute to have a fun conversation and just kind of talk about the year in review. So many things have happened. And before we get to that, I do want to call your attention just to one thing in particular. And you've heard about it off and on all week or since late this week. The Star Wars Eclipse video game and Quantic Dream, the studio, and the problematic issues with all that. I have thoughts. I have opinions. Pete and I are going to talk about it for just a minute coming up. But what I wanted to point you to is if you're a listener to Podcast of the Wills, and if you aren't a listener to the Pink Milk podcast, or even if you are, but you haven't had a chance to check out the conversation that Brian and Emma and Chase had on Friday night in their After Dark show, Brian sent me the audio of that. So I have uploaded that into the Podcast of the Wills audio feed, and it's a really great conversation. And I wanted my listeners to have an opportunity to hear from these people who are a part of the queer community, who are a part of those that are affected most directly by these decisions, which are troubling and frustrating, from a property that we love, from it's hard. And I think this is part of what Pete and I are going to talk about. It's hard to understand the decisions that Disney and Star Wars made to get involved with this company. And where does that come from? And where's the statement afterwards? And that's kind of, a little bit of where my head's at right now. But these are people who have been marginalized for a long time. This is a group of people who have a voice, and I wanted you to hear directly from them because they're in the position most able to speak to it. And so I just encourage you to check that out in the feed. It's up already. I want to throw a shout out and a thank you to Brian for sharing that with me and for allowing me to share that conversation with you. I really think you'll get something out of it. So check that out. And if you're not listening to Pink Milk already, you need to go subscribe. They have such a fun show over there. And I really appreciate them and everything that they do. So check that out, formulate your own opinions, and, keep pushing that spark of positivity that we know is in Star Wars. And sometimes we have to speak up, and sometimes we have to use our voice to support those who need that support. So I hope you'll check that out. I hope you'll get something out of it. Because it's an interesting time and it's troubling for us as Star Wars fans. I see JD saying it right now. He says, I find it extremely hard to defend Disney at this point. It's a stupid decision on their part. And I don't understand that. And I think that's part of where we all are as fans. We want to understand more about that decision. Why is it like this? Why is that there? On that note, and that's not going to be the whole show tonight. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about it. But I am going to go ahead and bring in my guest. Over the course, especially of this last year, this guy has gotten to be a really, really good friend of mine. He's a huge supporter. He deals with me on almost a daily basis when I'm picking his brain about ideas and things I want to do. But he also brings, besides all of his amazing shows like Around the Galaxy and Disturbances in the Force, he brings another side to this that we don't always get into and talk to. But my guest tonight, Mr. Pete Fletzer, works in public relations, and he's a public relations professional and has done this kind of thing for a long time. So I'm going to welcome Pete to the show, and we're going to talk a little bit about what maybe some of this means from a public relations standpoint. But first of all, happy holidays, my friend.
Happy holidays, Nick. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm outstanding, and I'm so glad to get to drag you away from your family for a little bit in your festive holiday sweater to
let me put it this
me.
way. At this point in the weekend, they're glad to be probably rid of me at this point.
They have pushed you away.
Well, they pushed me away, but they're happy about it. It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I think there's the topic tonight around, top 7 things that happened in 2021 from a Star Wars perspective is a very interesting one, especially as we end the year with this one. This one did not make my list.
That's right.
But it was, it's really an interesting and challenging situation. It's funny. I'll be super transparent on all this. So I had heard some stuff about Quantic, when the rumors were out there, and I honestly, I didn't get that deep into it because there were rumors at the time that they were going to be the studio that was going to be working on this. And then the trailer dropped as part of the what was it, the Game Awards, I guess it was, and we all freaked out. We were all like, "This is amazing! This is beautiful! I can't wait to play it! This is just like it blew our minds." And then very quickly thereafter, people were calling on the very real homophobic and misogynistic world
Yeah.
that is the culture,
Hmm.
apparently, of Eclipse. And, I think one of the things that people tend not to do, and one of the things that I'd always hoped for as this internet thing exploded, and I can say that because I've been working in digital in one form or another for over 20 years. So
Absolutely.
I've been doing this longer than Google existed. And so I was always of the mindset, especially from a PR perspective, that I always hoped that people would use this fact that we have access to every piece of information, right? In the palm of our hands, literally in our phone, you can pull up any piece of information you want. And I hoped, and it was my belief, that people would become smarter, and people would
Sure.
start to use the opportunity to get in from. Instead, what happens is, and we see it with fandom menace kind of things, we see it in politics, we see it in anything that's volatile. People go and they find the information that they want, and they join those groups and they stay close to those groups. But one of the things that I always do is, when I hear things like we're hearing about Quantic, I
Hmm.
I did the research. I mean, I
Sure.
immediately, in fact, you and me and Jerry and Scotty we were sort of
Hmm.
texting each other back and forth. And the first thing I found was that pieces of the case were thrown out by the French
Right.
court. But I also found other pieces. And at the end of the day, I think we need to look at this as, clearly there's a culture issue with this organization. It doesn't matter if the case was thrown out, honestly.
Hmm.
If this is the way, the perception that's out there, and it's interesting to watch multiple viewpoints from people who want to, I think we all want to, as Star Wars fans, and after we saw what we saw, we all want to just jump in and play this game, right? I mean, there's
That's right.
this mindset of, oh my god, it's beautiful. It's the High Republic. That's the other thing that's so strange about this. It's the High
Hmm.
Republic, which is this beautiful open space for everybody to play.
That's right.
And and um and so we started to do the research and started to look at it, and um to ultimately get to what you're, it's sort of the way you set it up is,
Yeah.
it's a really bad PR decision.
Hmm.
I mean, first of all, the game is probably, you talk to anybody who's in the gaming industry, what we saw was very, to even half that stuff probably won't even appear in the game. So I'm hearing that the game isn't even going to be ready till 23, 24.
Right.
Um, so they're so early in the stages, which means that the paperwork was signed sometime after 2018, which is when all these allegations were leveled against
Correct.
this company, which means somebody at Lucasfilm either ignored the research or didn't do the research, and neither
Right.
one is acceptable, and made a really bad decision. A really bad decision, especially as they clearly, the Star Wars, Lucasfilm, and Disney are doing everything they can to maintain this level of inclusivity, and so they really dropped the ball here. And there's really no other way to put it. There's really, I mean, I, as a Star Wars fan who happens to be a heterosexual white male, I was really hoping that I could find something to be like, well, but there's no buts here. There's no, well, it happens in every single company. It does. But if it's at the top of that company, see, one of the arguments, I'm sorry, I'm just rambling here, but one of
That's
the
all right.
one of the arguments that I read was, yes, but there's a lot of great creators that are doing this. It's at the
Hmm.
management level, but the management level is the one that's going to make the money. So
Right.
this Craig, whatever his name is, um,
Cage. David Cage.
David Cage, that's right.
Yeah.
He's going to make the money from this. And so I hate to say it, it doesn't matter who's working on it. He could have an entirely diverse group of people working on it. But at the end of the day, David Cage is putting money in his pocket, and he's the guy which is the source of this culture issue, who said things literally like, I'm not on the record, right? So I can lie. This is
These are
way
not
too
good people.
correct. This is too ingrained in the organization. And look, I get it. You can't just quit your job because you don't like it. And part of me wants to be like, if you don't feel like you should be working there, you should leave. But it's not easy to go get a job.
That's
And
right.
also, yeah, so it's ultimately it's just a really bad decision, and I don't like it, and I don't understand it. Is
Hmm.
what the
Well,
biggest problem I have is.
and I think and part of my wondering, and again, obviously there's a lot that happens. There's a lot of moving parts in companies and public relations, in statements, but like we're to a point now, and I think this is as much of it for Star Wars fans, and certainly these marginalized Star Wars fans in the queer community, the statements against women, all of these people, that we're at a point now, like we're ready to hear something from Disney and from Lucasfilm that says, yeah, we made a bad mistake. Yeah, we're going to, we want to continue forward with this game and we're looking for a new developer. Joey said it. I think JD said it, like it's time to pull the game, especially if there's that much more lead time. Like you said, if it's not due till 23, 24, there's time to pull. And that's tough because again, you do have people that work in that company in those lower levels that gets a job taken away from them. But Disney messed up and Disney made the mistake to get in bed with this company. It's time for the opportunity to do something to right that. If nothing else, step up and say, hey, we made a mistake.
Well, and here's the harsh, ugly reality. And I say this, and it's going to sound callous, and it's going to sound like I'm out of touch. But the thing to really remember is that, unfortunately, 90% of the video game buying public is unaware and frankly doesn't care about this sort of thing. And so they will buy the game. And so Disney is, let's face it, they're playing a numbers game. And this is why they didn't make a proactive statement on Gina Carano. They just let the contract expire and didn't fire her, because that's a more comfortable, and frankly, it's easier to do that way. My prediction is that this game will never see the light of day. It's going to go the way of 1313 or Battlefront 3. I think the concept, whatever the story is that they're building, because it's High Republic related, since we don't know enough about the story, it'll probably survive and end up being somewhere else. But this will casually, quietly go away, because that's the easiest way for Disney to handle it without having to piss off middle America. Let's face it, there's a lot of dollars that come in from a group of people that don't care about,
don't have an issue with this. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think you talk to a lot of people, they'd be like, oh, I don't care. So they don't like a group of people. That's fine by me. And it's ugly, but it's
I think, and I've seen this, from several of our friends. I think Jackson actually was one of the first people I saw that posted something to this effect, which I certainly agree with, but there's a strong version of, voting with our dollars on something like this too. If it makes it out and it stays, within Quantic, and it's like, I won't do it. I mean, I have too much love and care and respect for those brothers and sisters of mine who are affected by these kinds of things. And I think also, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the thing that sucks most about it is High Republic has opened the doors and welcomed all people.
Absolutely.
And this is a place that everybody's going to want to play. And unfortunately, the audience that felt most welcomed by High Republic is now the most damaged by this decision.
Just in one fell swoop, just like that. And then, and I think too, and Framey said it earlier, these abusive cultures at game studios don't seem rare. And I think that's also true. While I'm not an expert on it, there were issues at Blizzard. There were some issues, I think, at BioWare at one point, like Activision. There were some, throughout the video gaming industry, there are some similar issues to this, which may not have popped up as much on our radar because we don't get Star Wars games all the time.
Right.
But that's another, cultural thing overall that our friends are having to deal with, whether it's in Star Wars or any other franchise.
Yeah. And again, I just, having been in PR most of my life, I don't understand how this got as far as it did, and who didn't sort of raise. I mean, it's not like the Quantic stuff was unknown.
Correct.
All it takes is a search of Quantic Dream, and it's one of the first things that pops up. Which speaks pretty poorly of Quantic Dream, that they haven't done a great job of burying the search results. So it's somebody should have, or maybe they did, and that might make it even worse, is somebody in PR raised their hand and said, listen guys, this is a nightmare. This is a mess. Whether we believe it or not, whether it's founded or not, it's a PR mistake. And somebody said, I don't care, we're doing it. And that's
the other thing that fascinates me so much is, when I first saw that clip, whoever posted it initially, it came across initially like it was a leak.
Yes.
But then very quickly we realized, no, this was shown on stage at an award show. This was an intentional decision
Right.
to put this out. If it was a leak, not that it makes it any better, but it would almost be a little bit more understandable. Like somebody got this out. It wasn't
Right.
supposed to get out because this hasn't been resolved.
Right. Then you can
But
shuffle around. Yeah.
the willing decision to put it out in, prime time in a video game award show indicates that somebody went, yeah, let's go ahead and do that,
Yep.
which adds to that problematic in the decision making, just like you mentioned. So
Yep.
I don't know. I tend to agree with you. I don't know that this game ever makes it to the light of day. At minimum, I hope that it gets moved to a different studio and has the opportunity, because again, we want this era. There are so many people
Yep.
who want, I saw, we watched those clips, and like you said, we were texting back and forth. Holy crap, look at
Yep.
this. And, look at the battle station, and look at, all these other
Yep.
things, fake Voldemort at the end. Like, we're in for all those things. But all right after that, then that sour taste comes in, and we realize, oh, this is really problematic, and this is really not as good as it seems on the surface. So,
and I think what's for better or worse, and certainly probably for worse, I think we all need to just sort of strap in and recognize and be prepared for the fact that there will be no statement. Do
right.
not expect a statement. Expect it to disappear. Because if you launch the first Star Wars game in years, right, since Jedi Fallen Order, and it's shrouded in any sort of negative media, it's going to hurt. So it's not going to happen. But I would say I would put a lot of money on against them ever making any statement about it. It's just going to disappear.
Yeah, it seems that's the most likely path. In fact, it would be almost I don't want to say pleasant surprise, because that puts a good spin on, but like if they did say something, we'd all be shocked.
Right.
So obviously a lot of thoughts there. I do want to, push one more time, if anybody's just tuning us, joining in a little bit late. In our Podcast of the Wheels audio feed, I just put up this afternoon the Pink Milk After Dark show from this past Friday night with Brian and Chase and Emma. And they had a great conversation, and they speak way more to this issue than I am able to as members of the queer community. And so I really would love to encourage y'all, if you haven't already listened to that episode, or if you didn't watch them Friday night, go check that out. Listen to what they have to say. Those are important voices, and I'm glad to, help spread it out a little bit more. So check that out. Pete, I appreciate your thoughts on this, but we're going to pivot into something a little bit lighter. We are here for a holiday show. We're here for some year-end fun.
Yes.
And I've kind of let you go, and so you're a little bit halfway through, but we do have our drink tonight.
Sorry, once I started talking about Quantic Dream, and
it's time to
I was like, let's just start drinking.
That's right. we're going old school. We've got eggnog tonight for everybody watching at home. Got some eggnog, threw some bourbon in it, because, well, that's how eggnog works.
What we do. That's right. Yeah. Luckily, I have another off to the side. I'm ready for two.
That's right.
So
he'll be ready for a refill. So cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers to you.
And thanks for sharing those thoughts. So as we pivot, as we transition a little bit, before we get into the top 7 list, let's talk holidays for a minute. Any holiday Star Wars memories that you've had over the course of your life, or do you have any specific Star Wars traditions?
Well, I mean, I'm actually disappointed that there's no Star Wars movie this year or last year, because that was becoming a fun Star Wars holiday tradition. It was, ever since Force Awakens came out, there was we'd go to our local mall with my brother-in-law and his wife and their son and my kids, and we'd go see a movie. Then we'd go to lunch, and we'd go Christmas shopping, all this stuff. So there was that. So but I think that'll come back. I think if they're wise, they continue to put the movies back out at that time of year. But Christmas memories. I mean, for me, when I think about Christmas as a kid, I always think about the Star Wars gifts that my dad and mom gave me, or Santa. But I always recall, because I was 8, because I was born in 70. So 77, there were no Star Wars toys, but like 78 through 81, 82 was always some sort of Star Wars madness. And I have photos of me with a walker and a Dagobah set and a snow speeder. And I will say this, and I talked about this before on some show, that like the weird thing about the 70s and 80s was, for those that were alive at that time, it was a volatile time for the economy, and I remember there were years where, there were Christmases where my dad was out of work or times were tight, but my dad always somehow found a way to make sure that there was a pile of toys under the tree for me and my brother. And for me, it was always Star Wars things. And I look
Right.
back now, of course, you look back at the, you have an inflated price in your head, but these things weren't cheap either back then. And so to get a walker or to get, a twin pod cloud car and the Dagobah playset and literally, a dozen action figures, and that's my Christmas mornings. That's what I remember. So,
Hmm.
but that's where I connect Star Wars and the holidays for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I like what JD said. JD said start a marathon every Christmas.
Oh,
Get
that's
those
cool.
movies going. Get up early. Keep those going. And also, this is a really important point that we haven't looked at yet. But Framey points out this will be ATG's first Christmas.
It's true. It is true. This week's episode, we lose him a little bit if you listen to Around the Galaxy. There's a little bit of kookiness, but yes, it will be ATG's first Christmas. He's sitting right there, right next to me.
That's right. It's too bad I didn't
Um,
give you the heads up to maybe get some mistletoe and y'all could have a little moment.
It is an excellent point, Framey. I'm sure he's looking forward to it.
That's right. I'm sure he'll be in all the Christmas spirit. There won't be any, he won't be any Mr. Scrooge.
No, I don't think so.
Well, we talked about, what we wanted to do, and I've just kind of in that holiday spirit. I have said jokingly for the last probably 2 or 3 weeks that I was going to take the month of December off, but as I told you and as I told people, very in full disclosure, the last couple of weeks, like I like doing this and I like being here on Sunday night
Yep.
talking with great guests, and so I knew that I really didn't mean that. But I am going to be off the next 2 Sundays, getting ready for Christmas, having that little bit of holiday time. We've got some fun relaunch things going on after the first of the year, which you are helping me with, which I'm very
Yes.
thankful for.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So as we came into tonight, I really without making it too much, this is your life, just a, year in review, some things that, were big for us over the course of the last year. So the topic I threw at you was your top 7 Star Wars moments from 2021.
Woo.
Oh, wait, there's t-shirts.
That was my top 7, those t-shirts. That was my
So why does my screen look weird? Does it look weird to everybody else?
we're just off to the side, and now there's nothing
Well,
there.
that's right. It's
And now we're at the bottom.
maybe
Now
it doesn't look weird. It looks grayed out on my side. So we're going to do Pete's top 7 Star Wars 2021 moments, and we're going to throw these up there. I've got some moments as well that I'll kind of pepper in as we go along, but we're just going to jump in here for number 7, and he went with Kira in the War of the Bounty Hunters.
Yeah, it's funny when you threw this question at me. I was like, oh yeah, there must be it must have been 100 things because I mean, you and I we talk regularly. I do the Star Wars news every Saturday, but honestly, there wasn't a lot of major things. There was a lot of discussions, a lot of grumblings, a lot of rumors, a couple controversies, but there wasn't a lot of Star Wars activity. So I tried to think about things from a what happened with Star Wars fandom. And this one was the very first one that jumped into my head, because it kicked off this whole we hadn't seen Kira since the end of Solo, and we were waiting to see what happened with her. And this for a franchise that lives on leaks and has things spoiled and ruined way too regularly, the fact that this one did not get out is miraculous, and the fandom freaked out, and it was fantastic. It was really cool, and it actually got me to follow this series a little bit. So
yeah, and Jared's agreeing with you. He says that panel of Kira and Vader paralleling that one specific shot of Maul and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
100%.
So I have not, I will confess, and kind of like the High Republic books, one of the other holes in my resume is comic books.
Yeah.
I've kind of made my appeals and apologies to our friend Chris Ryans, and told him I need to kind of work with him to let him, point me in the right direction, get up to speed on some of these. And I know this one has been very well received and has been very popular over the course of its run. So I think it is a very fitting first entry into your list.
And I don't think it's bad to admit that. I mean, the challenge with the comic books, and honestly, I I read most of these, and one of the reasons I did was because I did one of the episodes for Chris Ryan's Quick Shots. So I had to read it, which was important. But on top of that, I and this will get me some hate, but I always feel like comic books end up like trying to put too many ingredients into the recipe, and like there's too many things going on. And but we now have the one from this past week where Kira mentions Prince Shizor from the Shadows of the Empire. So it's cool to see stuff coming to life there. I too am not a huge comic book guy, but this series, this War of the Bounty Hunter stuff, has been really really interesting. So
Absolutely. It's definitely, of the ones that I've kind of heard people talk about, it's near the top of the list of ones that I would like to check out. So maybe that'll be something to prioritize in the new year. um, so for number 6, we have episode 1 of The Bad Batch.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go a lot of different directions with this one.
I think so. For me, it was, I did not know what to expect from Bad Batch. And now you'll note that I didn't put the whole season of Bad Batch because I felt like it was a couple of episodes longer than it needed to be, if I'm being transparent. I enjoyed it. I really loved everything about it. But I go to the first episode because, to me, one of the things that I wanted to see was a direct connection between the end of Revenge of the Sith and the beginning of the Empire as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And the icing on the cake for me was the Kanan scene, and that really made a nice connection. It allowed, what it did for me is it really showed me that the Clone Wars era is Filoni's work, right? And I think a lot of us are very complimentary of Dave Filoni, and we love that he is sort of George Lucas's apprentice, and that he tells amazing stories and brought us Ahsoka. But connecting Kanan and Rebels, and then a couple other Rebels connections during the series, reminds us that this is Filoni's world now, and to see those connections was fantastic, and just to start to see the way the Empire so quickly turned into what it became that we saw in A New Hope.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts of this series overall. I mean, we spent a lot of time, and in fact, I think you and David Jesse were hosting the Twitter Spaces during a lot of those episodes on Thursdays and talking about it. And one of the things that kept coming up so regularly in those conversations, and I caught myself being a broken record about it, was the music and the animation, and how beautiful visually, this animation style has grown to become. Because this, while it is certainly connected to Clone Wars, this isn't that same style of animation from Clone Wars.
Yeah.
It has evolved. It's gotten, more refined, if that's a fair way to say it.
Yep.
But it just made it stand out. But the other thing I loved so much about this series, especially in those early episodes, was exactly what you said, seeing the transition from the Old Republic, or from the clones to the Empire.
Yeah. Yep.
And seeing the transition in, chain codes and registering, and all the people that had to go through all these things that, again, they planted those seeds in Mandalorian. They planted those seeds at different points along the way, and you see it pay off. And again, that's one of the big things that I think, and you have been the one, I think, that has said this before, that animation is continuing to do for Star Wars, is fill in stories, plot points, gaps. And that's very evident, because I think 4 of your 7 things on your list are animation and non-traditional Star Wars media related.
Yeah.
Because they're that good. And then, of course, again, in this first episode, since you called out episode 1 specifically, we get baby Kanan.
Yep.
And, to have that moment with his master, there's a lot in this one, because I was not... The Bad Batch arc in season 7 of Clone Wars was okay, but it didn't sell me. What sold me was the last 4 episodes. But by the time I watched this first episode, I was hooked. I was all in.
Yep. I agree. And I think one of the, you mentioned the animation style, and it's funny because now you go back, and because we're all such, sweaty Star Wars nerds, you go back and you watch an arc, or you watch a handful of episodes, and it really is. I mean, it's like watching the difference between A New Hope and The Phantom Menace. It's from a style standpoint, from a I mean, the lighting in the final couple episodes of Bad Batch was just, it was as good as any live action series we've ever seen. And so yeah, I mean, it's beautifully done. But episode 1 was just a great introduction to the series, and a great connection. And what I'm finding the animation is doing really well, and possibly more so than the live action stuff, is it's paying off for people who invest in the full stories. You can still
Yes.
enjoy it at the surface level, but if you've been watching since Clone Wars and Rebels and watch, there's little things in there just for you, and I think that
Hmm.
that's a great way to do it.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And it's you're a big proponent of everybody finding their way into Star Wars,
Hmm.
and what is the different door that you come through, and this is no different. Some people grew up as Clone Wars kids and they resonated with this even deeper than I did.
Yep.
Um, but there's a lot of ways for it to connect and fill in gaps. So that's an
Right.
excellent one. So number 5,
Yes.
I believe, similarly
Ah,
related, the
yes.
return of Cad Bane. I mean, how much better than that?
I here's my hope and my sort of hypothesis is that they threw Cad Bane in here to see what the reaction would be, because I think there's a lot of murmurings. There was, I mean, a year ago, we wanted to bring Cad Bane back. We wanted to make Cad Bane happen, right? And so we wanted to really test. They wanted to see what the audience response would be, and I think the audience flipped out. And I think it's going to lead to seeing Cad Bane in one form or another in the Book of Boba Fett. But I forgot it caused. I was a Cad Bane fan because I remember seeing him on Clone Wars,
Hmm.
and I just remember I liked him, but I couldn't remember why. But then I went back and I watched the Cad Bane episodes of Clone Wars, and just loved him. But I think the thing that I loved most about the Cad Bane episode was he was just really solidified as nothing more than a traditional Western gangster gunslinger,
Gunslinger. Yep.
which was so great. I mean, the wide shot of him
Hmm.
versus Hunter is perfect. It might be one of my favorite framed shots in all of Star Wars animation.
It's phenomenal. In fact, I almost used that shot for the picture I put up on the screen.
Yeah.
And then I just got this up close. You've got the toothpick, you've got the hat, you've
Yep.
got the low slung holster on his belt.
Yeah.
Like everything about it is, it goes back to the clear undertones of Star Wars, which have their roots in serial westerns and a face off. And, it was almost, to me, it felt like that scene was the modernized version of the old animatic of Bane versus Boba that we got all
Yeah.
those years ago.
I agree. And you know what else is really interesting to me about Cad Bane? And this goes to the point we were just making about the evolution of Clone Wars. Um, Cad Bane is way too on the nose if you take him
Hmm.
at face value. I mean, he's literally wearing a cowboy hat, and he's everything but
The music is westerny when it comes on.
right. He's got a southern drawl. He's very,
Yep.
he's cool, calm, and collected. Um, but it works now, right? And you suddenly
It
see
totally
that
works.
that now works, which again, I think this was a test to see what was the response to this character, so that if we see him again in
Hmm.
live action, and I would put money, not as much money on it as Eclipse never seeing light of day, but I would say there's a good chance that we see him in live action in Book of Boba Fett, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the audience responded like, who, if they didn't know who he
Correct.
was, they wanted to know, and if they did know, they were psyched. And so I
That's
thought
right.
it was just a highlight of the season for
Well,
me.
and they did it in such a fun way because you get the hero scenes of when he shows up, him versus Hunter, taking Omega, that whole thing. But then we get him again for a more played out arc, him versus Finnick on that old cloning station,
Yeah.
and so we get to see a little bit more action, a little bit more of, these two going at each other and kind of matching each other. So let me ask you this:
Yeah.
live action Cad Bane,
Yep.
who is Pete casting to do it?
That's a good one. Um, I guess it depends on. I was gonna say it depends on age, but it really doesn't, because it's just gonna be a voiceover,
There's a
right?
mask. That's right.
Um, I would love to see somebody like oh, I don't know. I can't think of anybody's name right now, but I would say I don't know, anybody from uh um what was the HBO Western series that
Deadwood.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
anybody from Deadwood would
Well,
be fine.
okay, and so it's funny you mentioned that because I have a thought.
Okay.
And even though we've seen this guy already,
Yeah.
because it would be a mask,
Yeah,
I think Timothy Oliphant should do this
I think he could do it. Yeah,
because he's tall and skinny.
right.
He played this character in Deadwood. He also played this character in Justified. He's the
Mhm.
long, lean gunman. He's got the saunter. He's got the draw.
Yep.
Like, and again, cover him up with a mask. And I hope we get Cobb Vanth back. To be perfectly honest, in
I
the
think
Book of Boba
yeah,
Fett,
I hope
that's
so
one of
too.
my. I haven't put it in your chat for you and Trey's discussion tomorrow yet, but yeah, but I hope we get more Cobb Vanth. But because this is a character in a mask, like he has the build, and it would be
Mhm.
kind of a fun little nod to say, Mark Hamill was the bartender in, whatever it was. Like, let's
Yep.
throw Oliphant in something else for a role that he's pretty much already done, but
I think
a
that's a
Star Wars
great call.
role.
And that's why I said anybody from Deadwood, because I was
Yep.
just like, I can't say him, I guess, but yeah, you can,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Totally would work. So that would be fun. All right. So that was number 5. We're going to keep going. We're going to hit number 4, which is Omega as Boba Fett's sister.
Yeah, I love this because I am the first to admit that I was a huge proponent of the fact that I believed that Omega was some sort of Palpatine
Same.
derivative, right? I mean,
Completely
I
on
put
board.
out the the picture of her standing and the picture of Palpatine's animated version with the hair and the stance, and so I was wrong, and I was extremely happy. And you know what I liked about it was, one of the things that I liked about The Force Awakens was the way they kind of just sort of casually threw out that Kylo was Han Solo's son. That was just kind of
Hmm.
like the son of Han Solo. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. What is that? And then the same thing with this was like I went back and I had to like rewind and be like, wait, did he just say that she's his? And then
Yep.
and you start doing the math and you start figuring out like how old is she, and the reason I think it's important and the reason I love it is because it just makes for so much opportunity in the Book of Boba Fett. It makes opportunity for future episodes of Bad Batch, and it changes her arc a lot, and it has an opportunity to influence the way we get to know Boba Fett. So that to me was just it was a great reveal. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people theorized it, so I don't think it was totally shocking. But
Yeah.
it was great. I
Yeah.
mean,
And there's more to come. Obviously, we're getting
yeah,
another season of Bad Batch, but that's another one of those wild theories that has been floated for Book of Boba Fett. Do we
yeah,
get a grown up Omega? Do we get, some sort of reconnection? What we don't know, and I think we've kind of kicked this idea around, and it's not original to me, but it's called Book of Boba Fett. And
right,
in Mandalorian, all the episodes are marked as chapters.
yep,
I really like the idea that Book of Boba Fett is going to be a non-linear story, that each episode hits a different chapter,
yep,
escaping the Sarlacc and figuring out what has happened,
yep,
getting his power back, maybe a run-in with, Omega or Bane, or whatever else it could be.
yep.
So that's certainly another one that I think has the ability to show up.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just the fact that she exists gives Boba some additional motivation in one way or another,
Right.
whether positive
Absolutely.
or negative. So,
Yeah. Motivation, and that's the key to any good hero or story.
absolutely.
All right, so that was number 4. Number 3, we're going to jump into the Book of Boba Fett trailer. So we've got a lot
Yeah.
of connection here, a lot of synergy, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think this was this was a moment because it kind of the first trailer specifically and the follow-ups all play a role. But the first trailer, because it put us in a spot where we were back. It reminded us, and it was the first time this year that we got a trailer
Hmm.
for anything. If I remember correctly, it's the first trailer we got for anything this year, and it was very late
Correct.
in the year.
Hmm.
And it reminded me of that. One of my favorite moments in Star Wars Twitter is whenever something drops, that mad dash to go
Yes.
watch it and talk about it, and just the excitement that it builds. And I was sitting in a car dealership because my wife's lease expired, and we are sitting in a car dealership, and the text came. I think it might have even been from you. And
Right.
I'm sitting there like waiting for the salesman to go check some numbers or something, and I'm like sitting there looking at my phone trying to check it out, and I was just watching it and reading the subtitles so I can get home and watch it and enjoy it. But it actually leads to another one of my points on the list here. Is just all the excitement around this show.
Yes.
It's real and it's exciting, and whenever a trailer drops, it's a magic moment for Star Wars, and I think we forget how important that is. It's a moment where the community all comes together. There's at least 5 minutes where we all love it before people start picking it apart, right? And it doesn't matter what side of the fandom you're on. You're excited about something new for a moment, and the Book of
Hmm.
Boba Fett trailer. And one of the first observations I had was it all looks like it came from one episode, probably the first episode or second episode. Um, but it doesn't matter. It was fresh film, live footage from a Star Wars property, live action footage it's magic, and that trailer was, and then followed by the other couple things, which just give us a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I love the way they're doing it. I love the way they're bringing it together.
I agree completely, and I'm so excited for this show. And like you said, we got the trailer so late, much to the disappointment of our friend Scotty J. Rowe. We haven't gotten any other trailers yet, but I know he is being ever vigilant, trying to watch for the next one.
Yes,
But
he will be right.
he will eventually. A broken clock is right 2 times a day.
It's exactly it.
But and that's yeah, and we're going to come to my other point about the Book of Boba Fett trailers and everything to this, because like you said, you have another item on the list that speaks to kind of the same category.
Mhm.
So I'll save that for a minute. So let's jump to number 2, which is the classic content that showed
Yeah.
up on Disney Plus. This is such a fun one.
This is amazing because I think that there's been this, and I'll take it back even a little bit further. I believe that so much has happened in the last couple years surrounding classic Star Wars content, and I'll throw Phantom Menace in that as well, because I think even though there's a whole group of people that like to forget that there was not a lot of love for the Phantom Menace when it first came out, and I don't care who you are, there was all these things about George Lucas ruined my childhood and all these things. And so I believe that the first line of the Force Awakens, when he says this will begin to set things right, is
Mm-hmm.
a very meta kind of nod to people like, hey, we got this. We're going to, because I remember there was very little promotion that recalled anything from the prequels. It was very much
Right.
OT related. So I think we got to this point where it felt like anything that took place before Disney and wasn't the original trilogy was never going to exist.
It's cast aside. That's right.
Yep, and forgotten about, and the negatives burned, and
Mm-hmm.
all that. But to bring this stuff back, and the first thing that I wrote when I sent you my list was the Ewok movies.
Right.
But then I thought about it. It's much more than just that. But the Ewok movies are what pulled me back to this content,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so bad that they're good. I mean, I did a whole hour and a half with Scott Chernoff where we asked questions that have no answers, and it's
That's
so
right.
weird. It's the stuff, and it's not great. But people forget, like, part of Star Wars is not great, and
Correct.
that's what's so cool about it. And the fact that we got the original Boba Fett cartoon, um, and the Ewok cartoon, and then of course the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, which is a gift. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
And one I didn't know that I wanted, because being not super in the tank for original Clone Wars and not having ever originally watched those Tartakovsky ones, other than,
Mhm.
being familiar with the artwork or seeing a clip here or there,
Yep.
like I hadn't watched it. So to
Yeah.
go back and watch it with kind of fresh eyes was an experience in and of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. And I remember I had watched it on YouTube, in it's YouTube form,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember because it took me years to get into Clone Wars. I did not enjoy the Clone Wars movie. Actually, I don't think I ever watched it all the way through until a couple years ago. Um, it took me a while to get into the TV series. It was a weird time for me as a Star Wars fan, but when I watched this on YouTube, I was like, this is amazing. This is really cool. And the fact that they restored it, I also think more than anything else, as great as it is to have this stuff and all the things that go with it, it's really, it's something I think people need to appreciate. It's a real nod to fans of all ages throughout the years. Because
Yeah.
again, this stuff could have very easily been just sort of forgotten about, and it's not canon, so we're not going to do anything with it. But it's a great reminder. It's a great thing for us all to have.
Yeah, without question. And it's one of those things that, like you said, the Ewok movies, that was, that was prime childhood time. Like
Yes,
watching those weird things and not remembering how weird they were until
right,
I saw them as an adult.
right.
Like some of those traumatizing moments, like the bones in the cell, or, these things that like, oh crap, I remember that from when I was a kid, but I
Yep,
hadn't thought about it in 40 years.
yep,
Um, to get to revisit that, to revisit, the original Boba stuff that was in the holiday special, and those, was it the Friendly Wookiee? Not the
yep.
Friendly Wookiee.
Yeah, I
Is that
think
what it
that's it.
is?
Yep. Or
Um,
yeah, I think so. But
but
then you also, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and then you add to that the Droids cartoon, which is
Yes.
actually fantastic. I urge
Hmm.
everybody to watch it. It's some of the most Star Warsy Star Wars there is. Um,
And it's
it's
got a banging soundtrack to go with it. So
it does. And you have a theme song by Stuart Copeland from the
Stuart Copeland,
Police.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah,
So
can't beat that. That was prime golden era Star Wars right there.
it was, and goofy Saturday morning cartoon crap, which is
Yep,
great too. Yep.
that's right. It ties right in with so many other things that we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence of, whether it's Ghostbusters and remembering the old weird real Ghostbusters cartoons.
Yes. Yep.
And He-Man was a big part of that era when I was a kid. Now we're getting the new Netflix He-Man, which is really good. um so it's a great nod to, certainly for fans of our age and our era, nostalgia, but also these younger fans, something else to consume, something other
Yep.
to content. Has Jack gotten into any of these old things with you?
He
Has he had
hasn't,
any response to
and
those?
I mean, we tried to watch the Ewok movies, and he couldn't sit through them,
Hmm.
which is kind of funny. Um, but it's kind of telling.
Yeah.
So no, he watched some of the actually he watched some of the droid stuff with me and didn't turn his nose up at it. But if he watched the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, I think he would like that a lot, because that's
Yeah.
it's the Samurai Jack stuff and
Exactly.
all that. Yeah,
Maybe that can be your Christmas break project, is to
that's right.
try and
Sit him
venture
down.
into
We're
that.
gonna watch
That's right.
this. I have to be
Pour up
honest.
another eggnog.
There you go. I have to be honest. I haven't watched the Ewok cartoon
Okay.
series. I just haven't gotten back to that. Like,
That's right.
I have to watch
It's an
Biomes a couple more
investment of
times.
time.
It is. It really is.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move into number one, and I know a lot of what your thoughts are about number one because I have those same thoughts. But and I retitled it a little bit from what you sent to me, but we're calling it the Bobazants. He's back. The return of Boba Fett, all the way around. Like,
Yeah.
this is just, this is a big one for this year for sure.
It's amazing that Boba Fett is as popular as he is. And there was a time not too long ago, and I've heard it on other podcasts that would now probably deny it, but um there was a whole common line from people saying he's overrated. I don't care about Boba Fett. Let's move
Right.
on. I don't need to see him in The Mandalorian. Let's move on. Um, I challenge you to find anybody that doesn't love Boba Fett right now. It doesn't matter who
Yeah,
you are. I mean, he's he's the face of Star Wars right now, whether you like it or
that's
not,
right.
and and that's okay. And it'll be really interesting to see where they go with the story, because of the fact that, can the face of your franchise be just an evil bounty hunter? We really can't.
Yeah.
I don't think
Well,
so.
they've proved that part of it can be another faceless character in The Mandalorian. So now we're bringing in the Mandalorian that we already knew,
Yeah,
um, and playing off of that. And I will say, I was never a hater,
right.
but I was also, even as an original trilogy kid and somebody who grew up with, like, I just was never impressed by Boba Fett. Like, he
Yeah,
was cool looking, but he had like 9 words of dialogue, and
yeah,
he died in what seemed like a kind of punk way. He got
yeah.
hit by a blind Han Solo and fell into a burping armpit in the desert. Um, but then, and that we had always heard, the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy, and in the years ensuing. So when he shows up in that scene, not in his armor, wielding a gaffy stick, and just goes, ham on a bunch of stormtroopers, like, oh snap, like
Yeah.
this may really be the deal.
Yeah. I think what
And
yeah, no, I think you're right. Is the fact that he came back the way he did. He came back in a way that got everybody's attention. He didn't just sort of sneak into a scene like he always did, really.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A very, very fitting number one. And of course, we're super excited that we're about a little over 2 weeks away from
It's
finding out what it's going to be and finding out what it's going to mean.
it,
Um,
as a Star Wars fan, it is so cool to be at that. Like we're in this countdown period, and we're a couple days away from the new Spider-Man movie, so we're excited about
mhm,
that. I'm a huge Matrix fan, so I can't wait
yes.
for that. I mean, we have so much great stuff coming out, and then after Christmas, we get Boba Fett, which is amazing.
Yeah. It's a
So
bounty of lots of fun entertainment, lots of good things for
no pun
Christmas
intended.
break consumption and, just being together with family and doing what you do best, which is sit in the dark in a theater for 2 hours and not talk to anybody.
That's right. I think it
Um,
makes sometimes this better.
that's right. Sometimes we all need that. Well, that is a fantastic list, and I'm so glad that you shared those. And like I said, it stood out to me that there was a lot of animation and some non-traditional media on there, but I think that that's an indicator and a nod to what we're continuing to see in Star Wars here more recently, and the recognition of that tool. One that didn't make the list but easily could have been on it was Visions. Visions was so
Yeah.
unique and special and stood out and brought 9 different things within that one umbrella
Yep.
of stories and styles and so much of that kind of stuff. So it's exciting to see animation continue to get what it's get. We know we're getting more Bad Batch.
Yep.
There's rumors potentially of a mall, something maybe down the line, which
Yep.
I would be all about. Some more of that
There's
storyline.
been rumblings of more Visions, which would be awesome as well.
Yes, absolutely.
But
Of
but
course,
is it?
we all want more Rebels, but we think at this point more Rebels is going to show up in the Ahsoka series.
Yeah, more Rebels equals Ahsoka, I think. Yeah,
Correct.
at this point. But it's interesting because, as I said at the beginning, it was a very busy Star Wars year, but there wasn't a lot of content, which
That's
is
right.
very, very interesting. And I think it speaks to the community that we constantly are speaking about it, even though there's really nothing going on. So
Can you imagine how insufferable we'll be when we have all these things coming out at the same time?
2022, the year of Star Wars, is going to be crazy. We're all going to
That's
lose our
right.
minds.
And our voices.
And
So,
our voices.
Well, I had a couple of things that I wanted to add
Cool.
to, your list and some things that were and I didn't write any of these down. I didn't make slides. I'm kind of firing from the hip here. But for me, some top Star Wars 2021 moments. One, and this is going to sound kind of selfish, but I don't mean for it to. The advent of this version of this show has been a highlight for me because Podcast of the Wheels has been around since I think 2016 in its original version. Me and my buddy Steve, the audio only podcast, that kind of thing. But when pandemic hit and when this year started, we were doing the Book of Boba or the Mandalorian recap shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told this story several times, but when that ended, it was kind of like, well, crap, what are we going to talk about now? And it just kind of hit at a perfect time where he had gotten really busy with a bunch of stuff in his life. I still had some extra time on my hands helping with my family and being home a lot. And so I transitioned into what this show has become, which is Sunday nights and a live stream. And I've really been blessed to have some amazing guests on. I've made friends through doing this. It has really, truly become the thing that I look forward to in the week, the chance to get together and connect with this community that I really do cherish about a subject that I love so much. So to be very sappy and to be a little bit selfish, one of my highlights of this year has been transitioning into what Podcast of the Wheels has become, the consistency of it on a week-to-week basis, and just getting to spend time with as my wife likes to call them, my weird space friends. It means a whole lot. So that's certainly a highlight for me. One of the other ones, and I have to shout out, Framey said it. They said they were sure that your number one would be Potathon 2021. It is way up there on my list, and you went more literal, like these are things that we got in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I'll take all the emotional picks, even though I know that they are important for you too. Potathon was huge. Potathon was so fun. It was so empowering and impactful to see this group of people come together and raise $8,300 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And along the course of that, look at who all we got to talk to. We got to talk to Ian Combury. We got to talk to Claudia Gray. We got to talk to Matt Martin. We got to talk to Paul Sun Young Lee. Like, we got to have these great people who tell the stories that we love and that allow us to do what we do on a weekly basis, all for charity. And that was, I mean, it was huge. I sat in this chair for like 15 hours that day, and I was ready to do it again the next day because it was such a good experience. It meant so much to so many people. And it's the spirit of what we always talk about, what this community really is and can be. And so in light of something like Quantic, or in light of some other thing that's going on, it's very heartwarming and reassuring to stop and go, but we have this. We have these people that are out there supporting one another and trying to lift community up. So that was a huge, huge moment.
It was, and it's just so, it reminds you that, like, we get involved in all the goofy stuff on social media, and to see people like the guests you mentioned, and the people like Mark Thompson and Christine Ariel, and Hello Greedo, who couldn't be a part of the day, but they sent in their best wishes.
Absolutely.
And look, you know, podcasts like Star Wars Explained and Force Center, spending literally giving an hour to the show, and Tatooine Sons, these shows that are big shows that people know, have a great following, and they leverage their following, and they took the time. Not all the shows that we approached did that, and it speaks volumes of the shows that took the time to be a part of it. And it's an honor and a privilege. And yeah, I mean, I went down the Star Wars content route, but that absolutely was probably the highlight of my year. I mean, we like you said, we spent 15 hours just sort of in these chairs getting things through for the day and making it happen, but we didn't make it happen. The people who donated and were a part of it were just, it was amazing. And it's amazing to be reminded that we can do this sort of thing as a community when we all stick together, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, and that brings me to another one of my points. And while I transition to that point, I did just put a link in the live chat. If anybody's hanging out and watching and wants to come in, we'd love to hear from you tonight. You know, what was your top Star Wars moment of the year? Just kind of help us celebrate as we wrap up the year. But that was one of the other ones. And if I can get as cheesy and cliche as it gets, but one of my Star Wars 2021 highlights was indeed the friends we made along the way. It was these people. And what do you mean these people? I mean, this Star Wars community. There are so many people. I couldn't begin to name all the people, whether it's the ones that I text with on a regular basis, whether we message on Twitter on a regular basis, whether we get bullied by them in a fun and loving way. You know, throwing a shout out to our friends over at Bro Axiom. They're on at the same time as I am most Sunday nights. And it's just a fun crowd of people, and it's just a fun group of shows supporting each other. Like I said, there's too many to name, but we've become this weird family, and we keep talking about, you know, what Celebration looks like in May. And, you know, I've said, if I can make it there, I'm hugging everybody I see. I don't give a crap, because that's what this community has meant to me. Not only over the course of the last 2 years, when we've all been through the ringer and we've all been through isolation and lockdown and, you know, not having the ability to connect like we normally do, but then out of that growing true friendships and growing partnerships. And, you know, I say it all the time, but, you know, I blow you up on a daily basis about something where I'm trying to work out, hey, do you think this works? Or
I do the same thing to you.
This?
So.
And so,
totally
but that's born out of a community of support that is all, you know, tied together because of Star Wars. And it just means so much. And I think if you asked, you know, 7 or 8 year old Nick, hey, this thing that you love right now, when you're 45 years old, it's going to be, you know, a part of your daily interaction, and you're going to do a TV show in your garage about it. And you're going to have these, you know, friends that live all over the country, and you're going to be connected. I wouldn't have guessed that, but it really is special. And it really just adds to not only the enjoyable parts of it, but like, again, what we're experiencing this weekend with something that's difficult, to also have this community to support each other and lift each other up and share voices and stories. It really has been far and away the highlight of my Star Wars years, just continuing to get to know the good people in this community.
100%. I think that is one of those things that is you almost take it for granted some days, and then when you think about it, you realize just how important it is and how great it is that we've been able to make connections like this. So
Hmm.
I couldn't agree more with you.
Absolutely. Well, I know you've got a show coming. Is it tomorrow or is it Tuesday? I think I misspoke
It's
earlier.
tomorrow. No, it's
It's
tomorrow
tomorrow.
night.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So tell us about tomorrow night. Tell us about all
Yeah.
the different Pete things, disturbances in the forest, all that good
Yeah.
stuff. Let's get some plugs going on.
I'm trying to get all the content created and finished before the holidays so I can take a couple weeks off and have content. But so tomorrow night live, it'll be the second week in a row that we're doing a live show, but we're doing it with Bill Sheehy. Me and Bill
Hmm.
Sheehy have been collecting, and if you're listening or watching, make sure to find the tweet and leave your crazy prediction and or want or theory for Book of Boba Fett, and we're just gonna go through and just kind of talk about him and get ourselves psyched up, and disappointed because things that we want to have happen won't happen. But so tomorrow night we're doing that live, and then we have two more interviews coming up over the next couple of weeks. We have one of the editors from Wikipedia is going to be on, and also
Nice.
Kyle Katarn is coming on the show.
Hmm.
And Tuesday we drop our interview with Cam Ray for those that weren't
Yes.
there live. So a little bit of
So-
content coming, and then of course every Saturday morning, disturbances in the forest. Give us 5 minutes, we'll give you the galaxy.
Absolutely. And I do just want to suck up about disturbances in the forest for another minute because that is so well done. And I'm lucky because a lot of times you'll shoot me like hey, here's what I think I'm talking about, or here's
Yeah,
a script, read this and tell me what you think. And so I'm excited to always but like, even when I know what's coming, like I listen to those 5 minutes because one, it's so well put together, but it's exactly what you talked about you wanted it to be. It's
yeah,
a non-biased news collecting point,
yep,
really intended not for people like me, but intended for people like my dad or your dad
yep,
or the guy that, the chiropractor that you talk about that you go
yep.
to say, hey, here's 5 minutes of what's actually going on
It's funny. There's a
without
guy.
spin.
Yeah, there's a guy at the gym that I go to who now listens, and he's like, I don't usually listen to all of your interview shows because it's too much. He goes, but I always listen to the news show because I always like to
Yep.
know what's going on. And it's funny because I think that's one of the things. If people do nothing else with disturbances in the forest, I love that. You listen to it, and Framey I know is a big fan,
Hmm.
and but I think my only ask would be that people share it with people who are Star Wars fans that
Absolutely.
are getting their news from Mike Zero and Doomcock and people like that. Just give them, get them to look for this every week to keep up with this stuff, and yeah, and it's fun. And honestly, it's good for me too because it brings me kind of into my PR days, right? I got to look and pick the top 5 to 7 stories, and I got to keep the stories short. And there's been a couple times where I've had to catch myself with an opinion, and it's kind of fun to write pure news, right? Because we're
Yeah.
all so opinionated. But I'm glad you like it. It's a lot of fun to do every week.
Absolutely. Well, as everybody knows, you're on Twitter at ATGcast.
Hmm.
You, of course, have our friend ATG3 hanging out behind you. Everybody's favorite sassy little review reader. I know he's going to get a promotion in the new year. I can just feel
I
it.
I hope so. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
going to get to take on some more responsibilities.
I have episode 150 coming up in a couple weeks on Around the Galaxy. My daughter's like, "You should have ATG3 as your guest." I was like, "I don't know if I could. I don't think people could take an hour of him." But
You never know. Maybe that's the challenge for you to accept.
right.
Um, well, I can't thank you enough. One, for being a friend, but two, for hanging out tonight and spending some time, wrapping up the year and looking at what we're excited about in the next couple of weeks with Boba Fett. And like you said, 2022, what's it going to bring? Are we going to get Kenobi? Are we going to get, so many other possible things? But I wish you and your family the happiest of holidays, to
Oh,
all
man.
of our listeners, to all of our watchers. Same to you. You are a crucial part of this show. You're a crucial part of why I do, what I love to do. And I will, even though Thanksgiving was a few weeks ago, we really keep being thankful through Christmas and holidays. So thank you for being a part of this show. Thank you for being a part of the podcast of the Wills family, the Around the Galaxy family, the Star Wars family. I won't say you're why I do it, because I would do it if nobody watched, because I'm a nerd and I like to talk about Star Wars, but it just becomes so much more fun when I know I've got these fun friends to hang out. So thank you for that. We are going to take the next couple of weeks off. We're going to relaunch in January. I've already got several guests booked for the first few weeks of the year. Some surprises. Somebody I've been chasing for probably 4 or 5 months now. We've circled in on a date for that. We're also going to change it up a little bit. So you're going to see some things that look different. But the core of Podcast of the Wheels is going to remain, and we're going to continue to be the podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. So thank you for that. I could go on and on about how thankful I am, but it's time for me to shut up and go in the house and watch Yellowstone with my wife, who's been waiting for me. So thank you to everybody. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope you have the best time with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones. And until we see each other again, may the Force be with you always.